In today's story, we take a deep dive into the legend of a criminal mastermind. One who managed to evade capture for over a decade and a half, leading four of the most powerful law enforcement agencies on a wild goose chase, whilst taunting them on social media.
Hunting for a man best known as the Facebook Gangster. A criminal mastermind who's been taunting police to catch him if they can.
He made his mark in the Australian underworld by consolidating power amongst the biker gangs and the Middle Eastern gangs, rather than have a bloody gang war in the streets. His business model was structured around unifying gangs. Everyone could get a seat at the table, the only catch would be that he would be the one at the head of that table. But that still pales in comparison to his other achievements. With the Australian underworld firmly in his clutches, he went international, helping form alliances amongst crime groups that had previously never done business together before. He was in bed with the triads, the Mexican cartels and European mafia groups such as the Ndrangheta and Camorra. He acted as a liaison for the global elites of crime, brokering narcotics deals while laundering billions in revenue. His ingenuity and innovation earned him the adoration and respect of his peers, operating like a CEO of a Fortune 500 company rather than a gangster. He leveraged this newfound trust into pioneering the introduction of an encrypted chat network back in the mid-2000s named Arnhem. Criminals could openly discuss their illicit operations without fear of detection by law enforcement. This was his most ingenious creation. The network could only be accessed from a particular mobile device, and only he controlled the distribution of these devices. At least that's what he thought. Because his golden creation would be the reason behind his downfall and even worse, make him a man marked for death. To better understand this enigmatic career criminal, we have to travel back in time to the mid-2000s, when he first started to feature on the radar of the Australian Federal Police. A surge in the importation of party drugs such as ecstasy, ice, and MDMA, otherwise known as Molly, on the street kept law enforcement on their toes. Tooth and nail, Australian Federal Police fought to track down the seemingly never-ending supply of party drugs that fueled the rave party scene. Soon enough, the Australian police caught a break in their case. They received a tip-off about the purchase of several money-counting machines by a seemingly unknown Sydney businessman. Deciding to follow through, they tracked down the Sydney businessman to an affluent apartment complex in the heart of Sydney. This was the first time the name Ayik crossed their radar. At just 31 years of age at the time, he was exceptionally wealthy. Boasting an expensive supercar and watch collection, he wasn't shy to show off his achievements. He was young, flamboyant, and unapologetic. His social media profile on Facebook was there to show off his life of adventure. This fast-paced life and inexplicable wealth raised even more suspicion, prompting police to dig deeper into his affairs. Australian Federal Police took it upon themselves to place their mystery man under surveillance. They broke into his apartment to set up their cameras. But little did they know, they had tripped off a silent alarm that activated a sophisticated CCTV security system. It had already alerted Ayik, and now the police were the ones being watched. At the time, Ayik was at the airport preparing to travel, so he sent a response team. This wasn't your typical security team. It was a group of outlaw bikers, specifically the Comanchero biker gang, to confront the people that had broken into his apartment. This brazen act told police that they were barking up the right tree. But why was an accomplished man of this stature fraternizing with biker gangs? The police found their answers in Ayik's Facebook profile. Ayik's ties to the Comanchero came through a Pacific Islander known as Dax Ngakuru, a man who Australian police were quite familiar with.
Ngakuru could be an especially helpful friend, because he holds the title of Comanchero Sergeant-at-Arms.
His word is in effect gospel. If he says, you will be bashed, you will be bashed. If he says, we will burn this house down, we will burn this house down. So he imposes discipline, and he maintains discipline.
The pieces of the puzzle were all falling into place now. The case was slowly beginning to unravel. This essential piece of evidence gave the Australian police key insight as how the underworld was structured. Dax was the muscle Hakan needed on the street. With the title he held in the Comanchero gang, he essentially provided Hakan with an army willing to do his bidding. But there was just one more crucial detail missing. How was Hakan getting his drugs into the country? In comes Mark Ho, the Connect. The man who police believe was linked to the Chinese triads. He was credited with making the introduction since triads are known for their strict code of conduct, rarely ever conducting business with outsiders. With Mark Ho in his corner, a pipeline had opened up from China to Australia. This was crucial to Hakan since it meant he could acquire the chemical precursors he needed to manufacture ecstasy locally. The merging of his operations allowed for quick expansion. It meant every major player in the drug game had to go through him.
Crime is increasingly becoming more sophisticated and borderless. So whether it's transnational, international, whereas once, I guess, criminals were less mobile, there's now a much higher level of mobility and sophistication. So that's probably been the biggest impact.
Well, it's quite common for organised crime figures to travel around the world. States don't have the ability to follow those people. Unless you've got that personal relationship with a policeman in another country where you can ring up and make a phone call, forget about it. You're really struggling to get something done in most circumstances.
With his international influence steadily growing, he realized things were getting hot in Australia. It was much harder to keep a low profile once the police radar had already picked him up. The net was slowly closing in on him. But he had an ace up his sleeve. Being of Turkish descent, he held dual citizenship as both an Australian and Turkish national. He knew there was no extradition treaty between the two, so he took full advantage of the system. He fled to Turkey after a warrant had been issued for his arrest. Utilizing his resources, he set himself up in the affluent residential area of Beşiktaş, purchasing a hotel known as the King's Cross. This would be his new base of operation for close to a decade. He had left Australia under a bogus identity, so the Australian Federal Police had no way of pinning down his location. He still had to overcome one other hurdle though. He still needed to oversee his operations while just outside the reach of law enforcement. He had relinquished control of his operation to another prominent biker by the name of Mark Buttle. For the breakdown on his story, please type Mark in the comment section. At this time, Australian Federal Police had realized the shift in the criminal landscape. Realizing the new power player who had stepped in to fill Hakan's shoes, Federal Police had named the organization the Aussie Cartel. Out of sight and out of reach, he doubled down on business. He had a whole new plan of operation considering he was now close to Europe. Being the transnational criminal he is, he wasted no time forging other alliances with major players over there. The Kinahans, an Irish crime family, were also providing him shipments to feed his Australian market. He was living the high life and felt untouchable. But his need for social media validation would soon lead him down a dark path. One which the Australian police would be grateful for. He had successfully concealed his whereabouts for 13 years until his social media shenanigans brought trouble right to his doorstep. His location in Turkey had been uncovered, but Australian police couldn't conduct an investigation. So the 60 Minutes Australian news crew took it upon themselves to hunt Hakan down.
Good evening and welcome to the program. Tonight we take you inside the hunt for Australia's most wanted criminal. He's a rat-cunning, ruthless gangster who's made an eye-watering fortune importing massive quantities of drugs into Australia. Law enforcement authorities call the criminal network he helps run the Aussie Cartel. But as you'll see, after years outwitting the cops, his arrogance could soon be his downfall. We've managed to link top-secret intelligence with multiple online clues, including some remarkably careless Facebook and Instagram activity, to discover this crook's secret hideout. It's where our search for Ayik struck luck late last year, when we received a tip-off to look at a hair clinic there. Its owner is Fleur Messerlink, who likes to show off exotic overseas holidays and luxury cars on her public Instagram page. A closer look reveals many of her posts are liked by this private account, at Hakan A79. With those clues, we asked sources in Istanbul to find any public records for Hakan Ayik and Fleur Messelink. Turkish records show that Fleur Messelink is married to a man named Hakan Reis, who owns the King's Cross Hotel in Istanbul. On the hotel's Instagram page, we find a blurry video showing a man who looks like Hakan Ayik. We then captured this remarkable footage inside the hotel.
That is him. We've positively identified or confirmed the man with the shaved head, heavy set, who we thought might be him. That is indeed him.
And here's the clincher. More searching of Turkish records shows Hakan Ayik changed his surname to Reis in 2014. Reis in Turkish means chief or chairman. Knowing Ayik, aka Reis, is married with 2 young sons, a new name and a hotel business, we did a wider online search, uncovering new photos of the couple. A wedding pic from 2014 in Turkey, and a family selfie. At his wife's birthday party, you can see Ayik enjoying dinner with close associates, including his Comanchero-linked buddy, Dax Nagurun. It's an extravagant life for a man Australia believes is the biggest threat to our nation.
His arrogance was about to bring him to his knees. During his time making deals in Europe, he had unknowingly been dragged into an FBI-linked sting operation. An FBI agent had infiltrated the Kinahans. During that time, Hakan was in the market for a technological advancement that would aid him in keeping tabs of his operations. He had been introduced to an encrypted chat network named Arnhem by an undercover agent. This encrypted network came with its own devices, and Hakan was thrilled at the idea. It meant he could communicate with his criminal buddies with impunity. He loved it so much he started to distribute it to other key figures in the global crime network. He fully endorsed Arnhem, and criminals loved it. On the devices, they shared drug shipment routes, assassination plots, offshore bank accounts used to launder crime proceeds, and every other criminal conspiracy. Little did they know all this was being watched by the FBI. Arnhem had been a Trojan horse used to infiltrate crime rings, and it had worked like a charm. Law enforcement around the world had been sharing this treasure trove of information provided by the FBI. Sting operation began to be conducted, and crime syndicates were rounded up in the hundreds. When the word got out that Hakan Ayik had played a role in introducing the chat network, he was a marked man. A green light was put out on him, and now he wasn't only hiding from law enforcement but from the criminals he once colluded with. On the 2nd of November 2022, Interpol and Turkish police set up a joint task force to apprehend Mr. Ayik. The joint operation conducted the raid in the early hours of dawn around 2 in the morning. They burst into the criminal's hotel, where they apprehended him alongside 35 other men who are believed to be members of his organization. They seized a ton of assets, including luxury watches, gold jewelry, over 300,000 euros in cash, and a fleet of luxury vehicles. As if to rub salt on the wounds, the Turkish police decked out the vehicles and announced they would be using them as patrol cars. A Ferrari, Bentley, Maybach, and Mercedes G-Wagon were all displayed in a victory celebration for law enforcement.